Which profession attracts the worst kinds of people? I'm a casino dealer. People losing money brings out the worst qualities in them, especially when I deal high-limit games. Plus the pit boss supervisors won't throw a person out who is literally spending thousands. Doesn't matter what they do or say. The casino doesn't want to lose those kinds of patrons. They are catered to. They can be so awful to the dealers. The job has made me look at humanity in a completely different light. Pro relationship tip. Bring a date to the casino and see how they treat the dealer if they're losing. You'll see what kind of person they really are. I have about 10 years of experience in the industry. Stockbrokers. I have some friends who are stockbrokers. I love them, but man, they are some bullshit artists. And not like, oh, they're a good salesman and could sell you anything. No, it's like they make shit up as they go along and try to sound confident in what they say. I have met a couple people who were successful lifelong stockbrokers. To be a successful lifelong stockbroker, you actually have to like what you do. They all had crazy eyes, each and every one. Honestly, the making shit up as you go along and sounding confident is a damn useful trait. I've heard someone call it rhino shitting. My mum worked in a prison. She said that a lot of the men in there for sex offenses against children were looking for jobs like driving ice cream vans, dressing as Santa at shopping centers, etc., as they liked kids sitting on their laps, etc. Apparently, it's way more common than people would think. I was a correctional officer, and the people who were in for the worst crimes were always the nicest, most respectful inmates, and looked very normal. Whatever normal is really. I think that's what was always really creepy. Very disturbing, but not surprising. I worked for a major after-school childcare organization and went through a lot of child abuse prevention, CAPA trainings. A big thing about potential offenders is that they want access to vulnerable children, and there's a lot of jobs and occupations that give access to children. We had to through extensive background checks, and even in our interview questions, there were hidden questions that could raise red flags. I say hidden because they may look like a normal question, but we would look for certain answers that would potentially make us not hire them. Best way to protect your children is to limit unsupervised access to children. Rarely is it some mysterious man in a shady van. Most kids are abused by people close to them. Family members, friends, parents, instructors, teachers, coaches. We could never be alone with children, always had to have other staff with us. Hollywood producer, it seems. Over and over and over. Politician. Over and over. Edit. It is time to stop now, people. You gotta go home. The executives that run moms. They're all bullies and manipulators. The worst kind of people that will tell you that your brother's funeral is a good place to recruit investors. I'm a consultant who had those executives as a client, and I promise this is correct. When our HR expert told them that they needed a policy on diversity, equity, and inclusion, the CAO responded that they didn't need anyone in DEEC telling them how to run their company. Like the AR expert wasn't even saying they needed it in an ethical way, just that they needed it to avoid lawsuits. The CEO still refused. So legally exposing yourself to own the libs seems like a pretty awful type of person. Also not really a profession, but there is a certain subset of musicians who are also wannabe influencers. Particular people who are very on Twitter, so backstabby and clout hungry. I find it worse the opposite way. The influencers who try to be musicians. Paparazzi. I don't particularly pay attention to celebrity shit, but I'll never forget when paparazzi climbed up the fucking fence around Michelle Williams. I think that's her name, it's been a minute. After Heath Ledger, her husband, died to fucking snap photos of a woman grieving her husband who had unexpectedly passed away a matter of days ago. I was pretty deep into my loyal anarchopunk, fuck mainstream media, who cares kinda stage at that time, but I remember feeling such a deep sadness for Home Girl that not only did she have to deal her husband's untimely death and taking care of their kids by herself, she also had to deal with these grimy Assam Striner make a buck off of photos of her sobbing in her own backyard. It's really amazing that everyone pretty much universal hates paparazzi, but somehow they stay in business. They're not working for free. We have a culture obsessed with celebrity gossip, but nobody likes to see how the sausage is made. Absolutely lifeless humans. Audio, visual bottom feeders with a camera searching for scraps and the next payment. Not only does their profession provide something that is arguably valueless, but the means to produce it is abominable. Predatory mannequins that need removal. Pyramid scheme property agents. I've had a few friends that have become realtors later in life. The ones that stayed with it totally changed who they are. After a few years, they are hardly recognizable as the same people. Vain, shallow, and 100 of the time they are in character and trying to sell. I thought I wanted to be an architect, but then I met a bunch of architects, and architecture students, and architecture professors, and they were pretty much all assholes. It was weird. I mean, how could it be so consistent? But there you have it. I used to teach in a program that often fed students into the world of architecture. Every semester I would orchestrate one charrette where I would bring in architects to critique student work. No matter how much coaching I did to both visiting architects and students would feel crushed by the feedback. There were almost always tears. I often hear back from students that it was the most impactful part of our work together. Used to a roommate who was an architect, can confirm. I majored in architecture for 2 years, and to this day I remember the pretentious, arrogant, almost self-worshipping attitude that career field has. I met an architect back then that said, if he wanted to, he could design a house that would make a married couple get a divorce. Where do these people get off? Edit. For the record, I respect the profession, and there are definitely exceptions to the broad generalization in my comment. I have not met every architect, but 9 out of 10 that I have met are a soul. One of the big reasons I dropped out of the architecture program was that most of my peers were pretentious and hostile assholes, and the professors had zero sympathy for the fact that I had a part-time job. I worked to pay living expenses. I was actually told by one of them that I should reconsider my goals if I couldn't omit 100s. In 1 year, the people in my program destroyed what had been a lifelong career dream. Sales. Ironically, I am also getting into sales. Spent several years in sales. I made the most money I've ever made in my life. I also lost nearly all respect for the intelligence of the average human. Judging by the comments, there are just shitty people everywhere. Who'd have thought? Yeah, I was scrolling and figured there's a little bit of everyone, except for police. A lot of police. Reality TV, and by extension, influencers. I prefer to call it contrived situation television. Although I normally try to avoid such programming, I'd really love to see a show where they flip the script and focus on the camera crews and directors. But the twist is that the production crews all get reassigned to different shows. Dirty jobs this week. You guys are shooting toddler pageants. Ice road truckers, pack your suitcases. You guys are working Survivor in Bali. 90-Day Fiancé. Y'all are hitting the crab boats in Alaska. I'd love to see that show. Law enforcement, double-edged sword because it attracts the best and the worst. The best in people who want to help, protect and do good. The worst in people who want to exact authority over people. Power-hungry assholes who are insecure and have short fuses and low tolerance for defiance. If you can't handle someone defying you without losing your shit, you shouldn't be a cop. Edit. Spelling. Substance abuse mental health professionals seem to fall into one of the following categories. I. Wonderful, angelic, and highly competent souls who truly want to help drug addicts, alcoholics. There may be 20s of the counselors, optimistically. Bi. Burnt out incompetently, lazy typed, incompetent, lazy, don't care type. Another 60. Or C. Absolute personality. Disordered, narcissistic, Machiavellian, sadistic types who really get off on the enormous power control they have over the lives and fates of the people under their care. Maybe another 20. The last group can do a lot of damage. This makes me feel very grateful for not having ever encountered anyone in category CC so fucked to wield power like that over people at their absolute most desperate. I would also say to anyone, don't let the fear of those types stop you from getting the care you need. The category of people make it worth it. Having spent some time in a mental facility as 1013, I fully agree. I voiced a concern to one of the more angelic doctors, and he told me point blank, don't fuck with these people. Just do your time and get out. They will make things really bad, really quick. I cried that night and then just went along like a damn zombie until I could go home. Elementary school front desk administrator. The trouble is, the shot they see. My sweet as pie mother was one, and the number of non-custody parents who tried to check out a kid they had no right to take and would get violent or aggressive when she said, "I can't let you" by law, or the number of absolute psychos who would try to sneak their way into the school, or the number of absolute psychos, or the number of parents who didn't come to pick up their kid for hours after school ended, and she had to decide between traumatizing the kid by calling the police or sitting there for hours after her shift ended to ensure the kid wasn't alone outside the office. Dude, the job is rough. So true. They're either the sweetest grandmother ever or a troll in women's clothing. Tow truck drivers. At least 80 of all the tow truck drivers I've met have been felons, and about 90 have been shady dickheads. Yes, I had an accident on the highway a few years ago. It was a multiple car collision, and nobody got hurt. But I remember a couple of towing truck drivers literally fighting each other to take my car, even though it was fully drivable. One of them told me that we just needed to get it out of the highway, and he would release it right away. I fell for it and let him take it. Well, he lied. He didn't want to release my car until I paid him $500. Well, maybe it's a case of being a job that felons still get hired to do, rather than being something that attracts felons per se. Sales, estate agents, recruiters. I was a recruiter. I can confirm. My office had tons of drinking, drugs, and married executives sleeping with recruiters 10 years younger. I left ACT for sales. Most of the people that give sales a bad name are in low barrier to entry sales fields, it feels like. High barrier to entry fields. Like B, pub, and tech. Seems like most people are pretty professional for the most part. Lol. Politicians. Bouncers. I swear those people are always looking to create trouble so they can exercise their right to kick ass. Former bouncer in my youth, and I can 100% confirm that most of the drama we were in was caused by the two biggest guys that just wanted to fuck with people and brag about it while we were having our after-shift drinks. Everyone. You'll start to realize it's people. My favorite movie line is, "A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals." It's so true. The 3 Ps: politics, police, and paparazzi. Psychology. There are lots of great people in that field, but it also attracted the most manipulative and destructive asshole I've ever known. He's a licensed therapist now, and I feel sorry for anyone who crosses his path. Not all nurses are mean girls, but all mean girls are nurses. And the ones that can't cut it are learning support educators. I'm a nursing student. Literally had another student tell me I'm going to be a bitch to you right before walking into our simulation lab. There's a parallel between women who become nurses and men who become cops. Law enforcement seems to have some problems. I'm genuinely surprised this one isn't the top one to be. Shocked by how low down this is. In my experience, literally every profession ever, every job I've ever worked has had she-heads, liars, thieves, abusers, and just nasty people you're better off avoiding. It's a sad fact that at least 1 of every 5 people is a total shithead. Sorry, but nurses. All the bitches from my high school became nurses. Any position holding any semblance of power. Academia. Intelligent people in very niche areas, with no consideration for the real world and social interaction, whilst simultaneously being told they are the best in the world at certain specific subject areas, which is true, but just not as many people care as academics think they do. You end up with an unnecessarily toxic environment of people trying to intellectually one-up each other and throw anyone off the ladder on their way up. It's a cruel, nasty, petty, and poisonous environment. Unpopular opinion, but nurses. There is a lot of toxic, abusive, high school girl drama type behavior among nurses. It's such an important job, and about half the people doing it shouldn't be responsible for a yogurt, let alone a human being's life. I've seen some shit, man. It was weird how all of the mean girls from my high school went to college for nursing law. I hate to agree. I work in an ancillary service, medical but not actually a nurse. And some nurses are just shitty. Then again, I also find that the hospital administration is even shittier. They're the reason why good nurses burn out and leave the shitty nurses behind. They're the ones that tell nurse managers to cut people for low census so that the nurses are working 6, 8 patients to one nurse. The amount of charting required for 6-8 patients in one shift is astronomical. I can't even fathom how they do that and care for patients. You would be hard-pressed to find a profession that eats their young more than nurses, especially older females to younger females. All of this in a stressful environment where teamwork and empathy are crucial. As someone in a related field, I've always seen nursing as a way to get a free pass to be a good person. So it attracts people with no other positive qualities, so they can fall back on being a nurse to be a good person. Obviously, there are tons of good and great nurses, but those nurses would probably agree with that statement as well. Human resources. Police. Corrections officers. They are often people who couldn't cut it as a police officer or couldn't get hired as one. So they not only come to the position as failures who finally have some power, but it's likely they have personalities that are unfit for police work. So what better to do with these assholes than to put them in positions of power where they use their position to inflict abuse on inmates who have no power and no means to stop the abuse. Came here expecting this to be gone. Did you peak in high school? Do you miss bullying nerds? Did you get used to authority figures dismissing your anger issues because you were a good athlete? Then we have the job for you. Staff in mental health wards.